So making a VR game, an action roguelike. You know, typical indie game dev VR stuff. The main idea? It's fun to hit stuff. Think Boneworks, Gorn, Blade and Sorcery, the underdogs. You hit things a lot and it feels really good. The level of control and interactivity that VR offers is incredible, so I want to play to its strengths. So let's get to the beginning and take a look at what I'm actually doing. About a month ago, I got this unstoppable urge to make a game, also known as being out of a job. So here I am with a vague idea. I want to hit stuff in VR with a baseball bat. I want to go with roguelike because as a solo developer, it's going to be really difficult to add story, plot, a lot of custom writing, custom animations. And roguelike is simpler. You can put some plot in there. It doesn't have to be directly told. You don't need custom cutscenes or anything like that. So roguelike, hit stuff with a bat. I decided to start with focusing on deflecting enemy projectiles because I thought that would be really fun. Like hitting stuff with a bat. Not violently, that will come later, but just deflecting the projectiles. The first direction of the projectile deflection would build the entire trajectory for the ball first and then just follow it. But then I quickly realized that it was not the correct approach and switched to the projectile targeting itself dynamically. Almost great. I'm not sure if that was a good idea or bad to start with this, but I think it's one of the main mechanics. I don't have a design document, can you tell? I also added a targeting system which allows the player to pick a target by looking at it and lock it in with the right trigger. And every projectile that the player deflects will automatically go for that target. And after making projectiles and making them deflectable, I decided to kill some time by adding an enemy. I decided to go with Cinti Studio assets, not just because they look great and I worked with them before, and I actually have them purchased, but also because they are made in a low poly style that can be reproducible by me even with my limited 3D modeling abilities. Giving it a simple AI, even if you can consider that AI, there's just a lot of if statements. It's always good to start your development with a so-called gray box prototype. It's basically a development with gray boxes for assets. You don't use any models, any animations, or anything like that. You can just test that everything works with the simplified visuals. It is a very good advice to follow, even though I don't actually do it that often, but probably I should. The first few interactions were not great, to say the least, but, you know, it's kind of part of the process, right? Your behavior is weird and wrong. And indeed it was. The enemy was randomly picking a point at a map where they can go, and only after arriving at that position they would check if it's an actually valid point to attack the player. So it just seemed that they were randomly running around, which they were. So I adjusted their logic a little bit. I made them check the validity of their destination before actually going there. So now the enemies seemed like they were actually going somewhere purposefully. Also, remember when I said that the violent hitting will come later? Now's that later. After getting your hands on a baseball bat, even a virtual one, you just start swinging it around and you get that urge to hit stuff. So the enemy looked pretty hittable. And if I got that idea this early on, the player should also get that idea. What kind of game developer would I be if I don't let the player do what they want? A quick asset here, some code there, it doesn't work, add some duct tape, it works, now boom, we got an interactable hittable enemy. I decided to go with Puppet Master from Root Motion as my interactivity asset. It's the same asset that Onwards, Blade and Sorcery, and Boneworks use. It's incredibly powerful and maybe even a little overkill for my project, but again, I have experience working with it and I can make it work. So it's a great solution for something like this. Cool, right? Did you know that in Russia, over 500,000 baseball bats are sold every year, but only a few baseballs? Also, I think it's appropriate to mention that I stream the entire development process live on Twitch. Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, sometimes Thursdays, sometimes Tuesdays too. As I told you, I don't have a job. Let's add another enemy. A little guy, he's gonna rush you and hit you in the face. Adding the second enemy was pretty easy. We could reuse a lot of logic from the first enemy, but tweak it a little bit, and pretty soon we got a working second enemy. Also, at this point I decided that it's appropriate to spend 4 hours trying to make outline work for a low poly model. Even though it's a known issue with low poly models, and there was a solution to fix it, I only realized that it was there after spending way too much time on it. So we have the little guy, we have the throwy guy. Let's give this a test. This is really boring, isn't it? Like really not good. You're just waiting and waiting. And like you can't be proactive at all. Yeah, you can hit the small guy because they rush you and like that's the only thing you can do. But with the basic enemy and with the core mechanic that I planned on, it just doesn't feel fun. The big guys need to run away so you don't just rush them and hit them with a bat. So they need to be a little faster than player. But then you just have to wait for them to throw a projectile at you for you to hit the back. It's just a lot of waiting, and that's not good. I want the player to be proactive, for them to set the dynamic of the battle, not the other way around. So let's give the player an ability to have some agency, so they can set the dynamic. And for that, I'm going to use something too, but this time from myself, from 2 years ago. I made this weapon generator for a game I was working on at some point. I think the idea was that every gun is going to have a single magazine, and you have to use your gun to get another from an enemy, but that didn't work out. So it was just sitting on my hard drive for a long time, so let's give it a light of day. Let's finish the gun code, make them interactable, and make it fit with the current code base. And now the player has something to do when the enemies are not attacking. Maybe even a little bit too much, because now you can just literally shoot everybody from the distance. But that's for next time. For now, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitch. I'm planning to take this game all the way to the release, hopefully, maybe. So if you want to keep an eye on that, do the thing that I said. And yeah, hope to see you next time.